This is Punk Rock and Politics, and today is April 17th, 2018, and this is episode number 59. Let's do this.
These days are strange, it's true.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
If you think that punk rock doesn't mix with politics, you're wrong.
Welcome to Punk Rock and Politics. Today we'll be talking with fellow podcast host JayRay from Politics with Dummies about this brand new podcasting network called the No Phony Podcast Network. We'll go over all the great indie podcasts who are on the network, and we'll wrap it up with JayRay's outlook on punk music and what keeps him inspired to keep producing his podcast.
How do I not keep going when Luke Dog defends everything this guy does, which I just think the whole thing's been a joke.
Yeah.
But Luke Dog thinks, this is the greatest president in the history of the United States.
Then on Open Mic's last call, we'll talk about the clusterfuck proxy war that is Syria. So all that and more on today's episode. So let's get to the political mosh pit. But first, here's the news of the week.
Here's what's making news.
President Trump attacks Amazon and the Washington Post on Twitter, saying, "So many stories about me in the Washington Post are fake news. They are as bad as ratings challenge CNN. Lobbyists for Amazon and taxes?" He also said, "Is fake news Washington Post to be used as a lobbyist weapon against Congress to keep politicians from looking into Amazon no tax monopoly?" Classic Trump attacking someone on Twitter. China adds new tariffs in response to President Trump's tariffs on steel. China targets more than 100 different U.S. exports from soybeans, cars, airplanes, wine, and chemicals. The U.S. goods going into China will be subject to a 25% tariff. In Oklahoma, the public teachers go on strike. And here's some audio from that.
The only alternative I have seen to the capital gains reform is for the teachers just to go home. And I don't think that's going to happen, at least not anytime soon.
We're going to keep going. We're going to keep pushing, and the good guys win in the end.
House Speaker Paul Ryan will not seek another term. Here's House Speaker Paul Ryan on the issue.
I decided to do this. Number one, as you know, my kids are now teenagers. They've only known me as a weekend dad because they were born after I was elected to Congress. So that's a personal decision, but I was able to make that personal decision because I feel like we have put our majority in a good place because we have gotten a lot done. It's making a big difference in people's lives. So I'm confident I'm going to be able to hand this gavel over to another Republican speaker. And because of that list of accomplishments, I actually feel content and confident. Therefore, I feel like I can do what I've always wanted to do, which was to be a full-time dad with my wife for at least part of my children's upbringing, because if I do another term, that's really all they will ever know me at home is a weekend dad, and that's just something I just can't live with.
Peace out, Paul Ryan, and you will not be missed. Radio personality Art Bell and the creator of the Coast to Coast radio program passed away at the age of 72. Art Bell has been a huge inspiration for me personally, and his radio show Coast to Coast fostered my love for talk radio. So this is personal for me. Rest in peace, Art Bell. You will be missed. An alleged chemical attack in Syria killed 70 civilians and prompted a swift response from the US, UK, and France. Here's President Trump on the issue.
The purpose of our actions tonight is to establish a strong deterrent against the production, spread, and use of chemical weapons.
Although the response from the US, UK, and France has gained wide criticism for not following international law, and in opposition to the strike, here's UK's Jeremy Corbyn.
The attack in Douma was an horrific attack on civilians using chemical weapons, part of a civil war that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. Mr. Speaker, this statement serves as a reminder that the Prime Minister is accountable to this Parliament, not to the whims of the US President. Her predecessor came to this House to seek authority for military action in Libya and in Syria in 2015, and the House had a vote over Iraq in 2003. There is no more serious issue than the life and death matters of military action. It is right that Parliament has the power to support or stop the government from taking planned military action. I believe, Mr. Speaker, the action was legally questionable.
On this day in rock history, April 17th, 2009, Morrissey walked off stage during his set at the Coachella Music Festival in California after declaring he could smell burning flesh coming from the barbecues and the vendors around. Other bands that played the bill were Sir Paul McCartney, The Killers, and also The Cure. See, kids, that's back when Coachella was actually a real concert. And that's the news of the week. If you're a longtime listener of the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, you'll know our number one goal here is to promote independent artists, talk about politics, and of course, listen to some great music. That's why on today's episode, I'm excited to feature JayRay, the host of a fellow podcast called Politics with Dummies. JayRay has created an entire podcast network in order to help promote fellow independent podcasts. And here on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, we're a proud member of the No Phony Podcast Network. And as many of you may or may not know, writing, producing, and editing a podcast can be a lot of work. And that's why I believe it is so important to highlight other podcasters who are putting out some amazing content. And that's just what JayRay is doing. And you know, how cool is that? But before we get to the interview with JayRay and talk about the No Phony Podcast Network, let's check out one of my personal favorite bands. Here's Oh What a Day by The Challenged. And that was Oh What a Day by The Challenge. And I have JayRay from Politics with Dummies, another fellow podcaster here on. What's up, JayRay?
What's up, man? JayRay on the airway.
How's it going, man?
Thanks for having me back on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks for coming back on. For anyone who doesn't remember or they didn't catch another episode, we had JayRay and his infamous sidekick, Loop Dog, here on the podcast a while ago. And JayRay, he does an awesome podcast called Politics with Dummies, and they talk about political stuff and everything they know nothing about, as they like to say.
Loop Dog would hate that sidekick comment. Oh, man. The world revolves around Loop Dog at all times. He is the star of the show. I'm riding on his coattails, just so everybody knows. I mean, I don't feel that way. And a lot of listeners don't feel that way, but goddamn it, Loop Dog feels that way.
Oh, well, yeah.
So please don't trample on that.
Oh, man. No, dude. Just since I know that, I'm going to permanently, for now on, always call Loop Dog your sidekick, the sidekick of the show or something. Because he did a Twitter poll. Because we're both really active on Twitter. That's actually how I originally met JayRay. I've actually met a lot of bands and fellow podcasters on Twitter, which we're going to go more into that in a minute. But we met on Twitter, and and then we had him on, and this guy is nuts. So describe to some of the audience who haven't really met or heard Loop Dog, describe Loop Dog for a minute.
Oh my God. Loop Dog is a 50-year-old guy that thinks it's 1985, and he's I don't know how to describe him. I always think about Booger on Revenge of the Nerds. If he was really in the poison. That's how I imagine. Oh, man, I think our show's over. I don't think we have the show anymore.
Oh, man. Total hairband, and oh, man, that's hilarious.
Big time. He's got 17 necklaces on, bracelets from his elbow to his wrist, earrings. He's got like a Flavor Saver beard that's real long. Not a regular beard, just right there under the lip that's real long that got food and chunks of
and
Burger King in it.
And he has the best. And he has the best laugh in all of radio. I'm determined.
Okay, good. Well, you don't have to tune in for that because I'm not going to attempt it.
I always have to ask you though. Is it like a pain in the ass trying to edit your shows and everything? Because when he laughs, we were joking calling it a cackle earlier because I imagine it would peek out the mic sometimes.
It does, but like I say, I refuse to edit. I don't know what the fuck people are editing. Even like this last episode, like he yelled cut because he had to go close the blinds. I just kept it rolling. And that's like my favorite part of the episode. We don't edit anything. So if it's working out where he's not blowing the mic out, it's just by chance. Because I wouldn't even know where to start.
Awesome. Yeah, well, hey, it does sound a lot better. I'm surprised you don't edit. And, that's actually really cool because I edit and I'm kind of a perfectionist. So it definitely, editing and everything, it takes a toll on you. So for you not to edit, that more power to you, man. And it sounds great not to edit. So fuck it. Don't do it. But
yeah, fuck it.
And you need more time because now you kind of launched a little podcast network. And speaking of Twitter, you found all these awesome podcasts on Twitter. So what's going on with this podcast network?
Well, it's the No Phony Podcast Network. And the thing is like I was trying to get Politics with Dummies on a network because it just seems like the next logical step, right? Mm-hmm. And every one of them that I tried, now I'm not an expert, is they had all these restrictions and all these rules and all, you have to do all this and we'll do all this, and some of them wanted me to pay them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I really couldn't. Yeah, I couldn't really get into it. And the good ones, you have to have so many listeners, and you have to prove it. And so I just said, I'll just start my own.
Yeah, that's so nuts. Yeah, I was listening.
Without knowing a thing about it.
You have a little on the website. It's No Phony Podcast Network. And on the website, you have a little snippet of you and Loop Dog, your sidekick, talking about the podcast network. It was actually a really cool bit because you had all the questions for him written, so he had to ask you. And some of the questions were kind of like demeaning for him to ask. So it's a really funny bit on the website. So if you go to nophonypodcastnetwork.com, you could hear Loop Dog being forced to ask all these questions. But yeah, you were going down this line about what it takes to be on a podcast network. And as I always thought it was really cool. I was thinking about starting a network. I never thought about joining one, but I was like, dude, I don't really have time or anything, or I wouldn't know how that would even work. And that's why when you approached me to do it, I was like, dude, I'm all in. That's a great idea. But I can't believe some of the other ones force we need to see how many listeners you have. And then I guess if you go under certain downloads, do they give you a warning? And then they're like, after your second warning, you're kicked from the network, or like
some of them is like, yeah. You have to pay us $15, but if you have this much, you only have to pay us $10 a month. And then if you get to this much, you won't have to pay us. But then if your downloads get lower, then you have to go back to paying us $10. I was like, for what? I'm getting retweets already. I don't need your help.
Yeah.
I can make a website.
Yeah, exactly. So what exactly does a podcasting network do? Or what does it do?
Well, it just promotes the shows. And as far as that, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, right. So, I mean,
it seems like if they have sponsors, they can get you a sponsor, which will help pay your bills. Because, if people don't know, if you just listen to podcasts, Mike ain't doing this for free. I mean, you have bills you have to pay just to make sure people can listen to this.
Yeah.
And, we have the same bills, and it'd be cool, and all the equipment upgrades and all that. I mean, it's not free to do a podcast. So if you had a good network with sponsors, they could cover that for you. But little shows like mine, man, you can forget making $1 from it, because it's just not going to happen. You have to pay to get people to listen to it, almost, is what the networks that provide.
Yeah, which
is a shame. Yeah, how do you build?
Yeah, it's a shame, because right now the podcast industry, it's such a new thing that's growing, and I think there's a lot of new listeners who are interested in it, and it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of seems like a consolidation of sorts. But that's why the No Phony Podcast Network is kind of open for everyone. There's no, it's basically, you're saying you help us out, we help you out, and there's no bullshit attached, essentially, right? You're
right,
kind of saying, yeah.
Release it when you want to release it, put out what you want to put out, swear all you want. I mean, just do you. That's pretty much what it is, because there's no set schedule for you. And a lot of people on our network release on the same day. On our other networks, there'd be no way that could happen.
Yeah,
and I don't care. Just do whatever you do.
Yeah, and one thing that I really wanted to do and offer my help to kind of help a lot of the bands that I've had featured on my podcast, Punk Rock and Politics, and then I wanted to help some of the our podcasts on the network, which we're going to go and list off a bunch of them here in a minute. But kind of like with you and another band, 390, of course, everyone who listens to the Punk Rock and Politics podcast knows 390, but you guys, I kind of connected you and Ronnie from 390. You even had an interview with one of them on, and now you're using their music as your bumper music, and you give them plugs. So it's kind of this cross promotion, and you actually edited their song, and I like how you edit it, man. It sounds really cool.
I talked to him. I wanted to, I didn't want to play the whole song at the beginning of our show.
Yeah, it's too long.
Especially when I keep doing it every week in, week out. And, he was super cool about it. Like, he contacted me, like, out of the blue. Hey, you want to use our music? I was like, yeah, can I edit it? And he goes, sure, do whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah.
And I still send him the snippet. Is this okay? He's like, yeah, do whatever you want to do, man. They've been super cool the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know where those guys came from. Like, they heard me on your show.
Yeah, 390. They're great guys, and I thought that was just an awesome idea. So any bands who are listening who have been on the podcast before, I'm going to be trying to reach out to a lot of the previous bands or future bands we have on, if any of the other podcasts in the network, they want to use music, because I'm always telling bands who are coming on, it's all about, networking and collaboration, and do as many podcast interviews as you can, and, let people use your music, because like you're saying, it's not free to do this. A lot of times people want to charge podcasters to use music, or you have to go really hard and try to find, royalty free music, because you can't create your own or whatever. But a lot of times bands, they're like, dude, use our music, just say, music by 390 at the bottom, and then it's a win-win situation. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what it's all about.
I really appreciate those guys. It's been great for everybody. I hope.
Oh yeah. 390, dude. Those guys are great guys, and it's awesome to see some of the cross promotion and networking. I hope my goal is that I want to get another band connected with another podcast on the network. So before we move on, let's talk about what are all the bands that are featured on the network. Currently, let's give them all a really quick shout out, and then let's talk about the featured one for this week or month. You got to go over what the hell this featured thing is. Let's give them all a shout out, and then let's talk about the featured one.
All right, real quick. We have Bats and Balls, which is sports from Australia. We have Punk Rock and Politics. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I don't know. I heard it sucks.
Do you know anything about that?
No, I heard that one sucks. But
Chasing a Dream, which is another one you might have heard of.
Yeah, that one's all right.
Politics with Dummies, which is just taking over the world.
Yeah, I won't say
Miles and Crawford Variety Hour. Miles and Crawford Variety Hour. That's a very funny show, kind of like ours. I want to say it's kind of like ours without the cackle. From the Bottom, which is, I believe it's from Seattle, and it's just real talk, real guys doing real talk. Between the Profound and the Profane. Have you listened to this?
I have heard that one. Yeah. I have heard that. That's like three guys,
like
right?
Some crazy. I don't know if I like it or not, but I can't stop listening to it. I'm hypnotized by it.
Is that's the one? The three guys are just kind of talking about random stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have.
Yeah, and I don't think they could. It's kind of like they're all in different rooms and they don't hear each other. I don't know. It's crazy. I love it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then Know Your Draft, which has been featured as one of the best new podcasts out there. And I highly recommend that too. And then the featured podcast of the month. And the reason behind this is because, just like we're doing right now, I don't want to bore the shit out of people and have people promote everybody every time. Mm-hmm. So we have a featured podcast for the podcast on the network. At least say something about these people. And right now our featured podcast is Release the Clowns, which is sketch comedy from Britain. And I heard you talk about it on your show.
Yeah.
It's the best produced, edited show I've ever heard in my life.
It really
is.
It's
like watching it. It's like listening to a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
To me, it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. That's like the gold standard of editing right there, and layering all the sounds. And like you said, it's really... It took me off at first when I didn't know what was going on, because it just throws you in to the story. It's kind of like a Monty Python kind of vibe, because they're from the UK. It's total that type of humor. But right when it starts, you're in it. I was like, wait, what the hell's going on? Is this part of the show or what? But after a few minutes, like you said, the editing's so good and the sound is like really, really impressive. Yeah, especially if you listen with headphones, because you could hear the sound layered and it's all around. But yeah, I would highly recommend checking out. And it's only like 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, every 2 weeks, 15 minutes.
Yeah, so just little sketches, and that's the coolest thing about podcasts, on your way to work or whatever, you could just listen to one of those, get your, listen to some of Loop Dog's cackling, or you can check out some Release the Clowns and hear some little British comedy. That's the coolest part about podcasts.
There's something for everybody.
Exactly.
There's got to be something for everybody.
Exactly. So how is it working with the featured band? Is it every 2 weeks or a month, or what are we doing with that?
With the featured podcast, it's every 4 weeks. We kind of started in the middle of the month. So around the 15th of every month, the website will update, and I'll let everybody know who the new featured is.
Cool. Yeah, and then
But it goes by in order of how they joined. So Release the Clowns was first, so they were featured first, and Bats and Balls will be next month.
Cool. And then we'll kind of go down the list. And then, of course, anyone who's not checking the website or following the No Phony Twitter account, or like I said, going to the website, the No Phony Podcast Network.com. I'll be shouting out all the new podcasts or the featured podcasts when they're featured here on like Open Mic's Last Call. Just to remind everyone, to go out there, because here on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, we're all about supporting independent artists, whether they're bands, musicians, or podcasters or artists just in general. So awesome, man. Well, dude, I'm looking forward to the No Phony Podcast Network. And, like I was saying earlier, we're going to take over the podcasting world here, right?
World domination, dude. One podcast at a time. It's definitely going to happen with Luke Dogg leading us. I mean, I don't see how we can be stopped.
We have Loop Dog, man. So we are good, dude. Oh, this is fun. We have Loop Dog here. We could just we got him to make fun of him. He can't defend himself or anything.
Yeah, and
Loop Dog.
People always accuse me. Even like I get emails. Why are you such a bully? You talk on your show about how you don't like bullying and how you're against it. Yet I'll rip his hair out right while we're on. While we're on the microphone and push him out. And he has Politics with Dummies is an acronym, PWD, which is also person with disabilities. Okay. And Luke Dogg I always thought that was clever, because Luke Dogg was born with some physical disabilities, which he hates that word. And so we'll be out and people can see that he's got some issues, and I'll push him down on the ground right in front of people I don't know. And it just blows people up. But what they don't realize is that Luke Dogg is one of the biggest assholes that's ever lived, and he deserves all of it. And if you're judging me, go spend an hour with this guy, and then let me know if I'm a bad person or not.
And then they'll be kind of like, thank God JayRay is putting Luke Dogg in his place. I had a
my wedding.
He's kind of like a Cartman, the Cartman of the group. You need to keep him in check. But he was at your wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. He was in my wedding.
Oh, he was in your wedding.
He was one of the people that stood up in my wedding. Okay, he was the fourth one down. Have you ever been to a wedding? You've heard the give a speech? You've heard the bride's father give a speech. Have you ever heard the fourth guy down grab the microphone?
Oh, God.
Because fucking Luke Dogg did, and he went out for like 10 minutes till I slapped him and took the mic away from him.
Was he like totally hammered too when he's doing it?
No, he wasn't. I wouldn't allow him to drink, because when he drinks, it's worse.
Oh, man, he wasn't even drunk.
So I told him he could be at my wedding, but he can't drink.
Oh, nice. Oh, awesome. Oh, man. We actually have another. Yeah.
Oh, let me just real quick, because just 2 weeks earlier we were at a bachelor party, and he was drinking there. And before the sun went down, he was already too drunk to walk. So the limo driver had to keep an eye on him. And Luke Dogg, while we're in the bar, he had to go pee. So the limo driver helped him walk to the alley. And when I came out, the limo driver's like, yeah, I had to take Luke Dogg to pee. I was like, oh, okay. And he looked at me real dead, and he goes, I had to help him take it out.
Oh, my God. Oh, wow.
I was like, dude, I'm done.
Oh, man, wow, dude, you better have given
and
that
people
limo
why
driver.
I shut him down. Yeah.
You better have given that limo driver a big tip, man.
Oh yeah, we hooked him up.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I don't even think. Yeah, well, he's like, I am getting paid, so. We have
There's
one more.
Money.
Why are there so many songs of Loop Dogg and peeing himself? Because there's one with an iconic band that I was thinking of a story. But let's check out, speaking of bands, let's check out one more band, and then we'll get to that awesome story in a minute. But here, speaking of 390 and networking and doing all the networking with the podcast, 390 is the intro music with Politics with Dummies. Let's check out one of their songs. Here's I Don't Want to Be Controlled by 390.
for each other, but you take down all the others. You wanted my money for the poor, but you had all of yours. Now he sits in his house and cries. It's a generation in demise. You better bow down to what they say, 'cause it's gonna be a better day. Don't wanna be controlled. Don't wanna be controlled. Not the kind of thing you want to turn you on. Don't wanna be controlled. Don't wanna be controlled. Look out! Here it comes! Oblivion! We need a new revolution! A new revolution! We need a new revolution! A new revolution! We need a new revolution! A new revolution! And we need it now! Don't wanna be controlled! Don't wanna be controlled! Not the kind of thing you want to turn you on! Don't wanna be controlled! Don't wanna be controlled! Look out! Here it comes! Oblivion! Don't wanna be controlled! Don't wanna be controlled! Not the kind of thing you want to turn you on! Don't wanna be controlled! Don't wanna be controlled! Look out! Here it comes! Oblivion!
And that was I Don't Want to Be Controlled by 390. And speaking of Loop Dog and bands and music and shows, I remember, I think it was on one of the episodes of your podcast, you and Loop Dog were reminiscing on a band, a show that you guys went, a band that you're a huge fan of, and Loop Dog had...
Fishbone Soldier.
Yeah, Fishbone. And Loop Dog had to pee. And what... Do you tell that story? That is a hilarious story.
All right, it's another episode where Loop Dog is drunk while the sun's still out 2 hours before the show. He's already messed up. We're actually having lunch with the band Fishbone. We've seen them so many times that they know us. And so the show starts and Loop Dog is sitting in the back and he's yelling, like we hear between songs, I gotta go pee. I gotta go. Like we can hear it. So me and my friend, we go to help him because Loop can't walk. We carry him to the bathroom. We're real mad at this point. We carry him through the crowd into the bathroom, throw him in the stall. Then I reach over, I'm really tall, and lock it because I know he doesn't have the dexterity to unlock it. So we're just going to leave him in there. We're just going to leave him in there. So 20 minutes later, we're watching the show, and my friend says, hey, man, maybe we should check on Lou. And we both laugh, fuck him. We'll get him when we get him. So the show's over. We're having a beer at the bar. We've totally forgotten about Lou. When one of my other friends says, hey, isn't there another guy with you? Shit. So we go running in the bathroom. There's no Loop in there. The door's unlocked. He's out. We haven't seen him. So we're looking everywhere. We're looking. He's on the loose. Yeah. Loop on the loose.
Yeah.
So we're looking through the bar. We're looking, behind couches. We're looking in aisles. We cannot find Loop. So I go up the stage to the back, and in the green room, there's Loop sitting with Angelo Moore of Fishbone. They're sitting there having a beer and chit-chat. And it was really cool. We took pictures and stuff. I pulled out some of Lupe's hair in front of Angelo. It was a good time. We got a lot of pictures from it.
That's awesome. It ended up working out.
It's not awesome.
Well,
it's embarrassing.
Well, it ended up working out. He somehow wandered back there, and then because of Loop Dog, you were able to meet, your favorite band, Fishbone. So I think that's pretty cool.
I love Fishbone.
Yeah. And
they're great guys, man. They're all great guys.
Oh, really? Really? That's cool. I love it when you meet a band and they're just great people and they're already great musicians. It just it tops it off. Because nothing worse than meeting assholes. Like one of the guys in the bands are an asshole. But we were talking last time you were on the podcast. We were talking about politics, and we were talking about, Loop was just cackling the whole time. So it was kind of chaotic. But we were talking after the podcast about how you were a really big punk fan. And, Henry Rollins is a really big inspiration to you. And, we're kind of like, dude, like, when you come back on, let's kind of go more into that. So, we have some time to burn, dude. Let's talk about Henry Rollins and some punk music and stuff.
Talking right on. I mean, I don't want to turn this into a Dr. Phil episode or anything, but I was a very troubled young man. I had a lot of social disorders where I had trouble talking to people, so I was always by myself. And the only person that was really there to talk to me was Henry. You know what I mean? You throw on his talking from the box or his other stuff, his spoken word, his music. And it was like he was talking directly to me. And his song actually, Low Self-Opinion, off the End of Silence album. I know I'm sounding like a kid here, but like that song was my life. And he was like, if you could see the you that I see when I see you, you'd see yourself differently. And man, that totally changed my perspective.
Wow.
And so when I finally got to meet him 20, 30 years later after that, you've heard Henry. He's not very social, right? Wasn't really.
I've never met him. I didn't know you met him. That's amazing. But I have seen him do a spoken word live. I'll get into that later. But yeah, I didn't know he was quiet. I didn't know that.
Right. We went to a spoken word. I took my wife, and it bored her to tears. She didn't give a shit. She don't give a shit about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, it was, an amazing experience, and I wanted to be one of those assholes, even though I'm in my 40s, to go up to him after the show and say, "Hey, man, thank you. You changed my life, yada yada."
Yeah.
But when I walked up to him, gave him a little fist pound or whatever, he's like, "Hey, if you got something to say to me, just write me an email." I'm like, okay. Mm-hmm. That was our conversation. So I did.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this about Henry, but if you write him an email, no matter what it is, he's going to write you back. If he gets 10,000 today, he'll get to it. He's got that kind of work ethic.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't a day later, he wrote me back a big 2-page, email just for me.
No shit.
Which I'm not going to share.
Wow. No, of course, but that's,
but he will do that.
It was totally in response to what you wrote to him, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
It wasn't like I was scared it was going to be a form letter.
Yes.
But he was referring to things that I talked about. You know what I mean? And he's like, I remember telling you to write me an email when you fist pounded me. It was all that.
Yeah.
It was to me. Yeah.
Maybe he just knows that communication could be so much deeper. And now, instead of, if you would have just had a conversation there in person, you could have maybe forgotten some of it. It wouldn't have been, but now you have it on email, and you could always go back and look at that and reread it. And I mean, how fucking awesome is that? That's wow.
Yeah, it was super cool.
Man, that makes me respect him a hell of a lot more. I didn't even think that was possible, but what an amazing guy. Wow. Speaking of Henry, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, speaking of Henry
I was going to switch to gears.
No. Before we switch gears on Henry Rollins, I went to Coachella 2009, I believe it was, and he was doing a spoken word at Coachella, and I went there originally to see Paul McCartney of the Beatles. He's playing, but one of the days I was like, no shit, Henry Rollins doing a spoken word on the side stage over here. So I went to the side stage where it was, and I was like, is this really where it's gonna be? Because they had like Chemical Brothers playing or something before him, like not even joking. So everyone's all dancing and all like moving around. It was like My Chemical Brothers, total EDM music. And then after they stop, it gets quiet, and Henry walks up to the stage, and he just starts talking, and then he goes off and starts talking about the killing fields of Cambodia in the Vietnam War, and how when he went and visited the killing fields of Cambodia, and talking about the Vietnam War and what American imperialism did there, and how there's families who are still looking for body parts and bones of their family who were murdered there. And it was just looking around how the scene and atmosphere just changed, and everyone's face was just like, what the fuck? You know, like in Coachella, looking at everyone was, you know, they were totally dancing, having a great time. And now all of a sudden, Henry's just up there just dropping mad knowledge on them, but doing it in such a way that like it didn't like piss them off and offend them. He slowly eased into it. And it was one of those concert events that I'll never forget. And it's so crazy because there wasn't even an instrument involved in that show.
Right.
You know, so yeah, dude, that's so cool, man. Yeah, more props to Henry Rollins. That's so awesome that happened and everything.
Yeah, I was pumped up. I'm still pumped up.
Definitely.
But another Black Flag person, Greg Ginn, I was at a bar that seats like 20 people. There was like 3 people in the bar, and one of them was Greg Ginn on his laptop. And I recognized him as, that's Greg Ginn over there from Black Flag. What the fuck?
Oh, nice.
So I looked over and I said, are you Greg? And he said, yeah. I said, from Black Flag? He goes, used to be. And we sat and had a real nice conversation. Dude, he was super cool. And he's like, dude, I got to get a picture with you. Like, he asked me to get a picture with him.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just crazy. And you hear about how Greg's kind of an asshole with his whole, the way he ran his record company and fucked over some punk rock bands. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
Have you heard this?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Okay. But, you know, I don't really know the details of all that. All I know is that Greg was super cool when I met him. I've met a lot of people in bands, you know, that I don't get autographs or all that, but if I have a chance to like chit chat, I will do that because I go to a lot of shows and I run into a lot of people. But some people it just sticks with you that, hey man, this is not like some album dude. This is a real person.
Yeah.
I think that gets lost sometimes, you know, the screaming and, you know, oh, that's Justin Timberlake over there. It's just a dude.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
just a dude.
Yeah. I do get starstruck sometimes, or I used to before, but more and more now, you know, it's like you said, yeah, you kind of realize, well, it's just, you know, they're just people. But it is really awesome when you're able to talk with someone and have an actual conversation. That's one thing that I do like about this podcast is when I'll have some bands on. And some of the bands, they're more seasoned, so you could tell they do a lot of interviews, like radio interviews and whatnot. So I can kind of talk to them, and we'll be talking about, you know, oh, when's your next show? When are you doing this? And they kind of just recite it off like a robot. Oh, we're playing here, go to this website, do this, you know. Oh, yeah, we're putting out this album, blah, 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 you know. But then I kind of go and I'll dig deep, and we'll talk about a serious issue, and then we kind of break the ice and have a deep conversation and go down. And that's what I love doing with the bands, is having a deeper conversation that's more than like, how did you create your band name, or, you know, where are you guys touring? And I like it when after the podcast ends, they're like, yo, man, I didn't really plan on getting that deep with that conversation, or, you know, whatever. I'm like, dude, that's what I want, you know? So I think that's so awesome, because a lot of the bands and artists and musicians, they do kind of get, like you say, like, I don't know about Justin Timberlake, but, you know, a lot of these celebrity figures, their egos get crazy. You watch that TMZ stuff, you know, and it's just like, you know, some of the reactions, it's like, damn, why does our society make these people famous? You know, not just musicians, but also, you know, the Kardashians and the whole TMZ realm. It's just like, ugh. And then we have some of the coolest fucking people like Henry Rollins, who, you know, he's famous, but, you know, he's still under the radar.
He struggles.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shame, man, you know. But speaking of TMZ and fucking just this world that we're living in, I can't have you on the podcast here without doing a little bit of politics talk, but I have to ask you, with Trump right now and with just the constant barrage of just bullshit that's constantly coming out, you talk about it on your show, and it's interesting because Loop is more of a conservative kind of Trump supporter, so you two go at it.
Big time.
Yeah, you two go at it, which is totally what makes your show so entertaining, in my opinion, because you guys have the differing opinions. But what because we're more on like the liberal progressive side, how can we keep going and keep covering this news without getting burnt out, as podcast producers?
Well, to me, it's kind of like, I kind of see it the other way. It's like, how do I not keep going when Loop Dog defends everything this guy does, which I just think the whole thing's been a joke.
Yeah.
But Loop Dog thinks, this is the greatest president in the history of the United States. So to me, it's easy to come up with things to talk about and how to talk about him, because I know I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes yelling at Loop Dog.
Yeah.
And to me, that's okay.
He honestly thinks like Donald Trump is the best president like ever. Better than Reagan?
Yeah, because, listen, he used to watch The Apprentice. Okay, that was his favorite show. And so the Donald Trump that was on The Apprentice, he thinks that's the same person that's running the country. You know what I mean? The little 5 minutes at the end of The Apprentice where he picks, who gets to stay and who gets to leave, and with all this integrity that was bullshit on the show, he thinks that's the guy that's president. And there's no wavering that with him. It's just that closed-minded, we're dummies, dude. That's why it's politics with dummies. We're stupid.
Both
and I
in
see
your own
something
ways.
like Rex Tillerson finally got fired or whatever. To me, I'm like, okay, here's how I'm going to grab Loop Dog by the throat and convince him. We're both trying to convince each other. Yeah. It's an argument that's been going on for 10 months or whatever, and it's just going to keep going because neither one of us will waver.
Yes,
so to me, it's fun. I don't really get burned out. I get more and more evidence to yell at Loop Dog about. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I need to switch up my perspective and look at it like that to get my energy going. But I do have to say, when you said like Rex Tillerson getting out and then also Gary Cohn being fired, we're getting Mike Pompeo, like this evangelical neocon conservative, being replacing Rex Tillerson. So everyone, how crazy is it that we are missing the ex-CEO of ExxonMobil being our secretary? Trump is putting in such horrible people now that his previous horrible people, they look great in comparison to who he's putting in now. And like with Mike Pompeo, and then you have Larry fucking Kudlow, who's taking over Gary Cohn. It's like, oh my God, these people are so much worse. And so, man, I'm interested to hear how Loop can keep defending them, because a lot of the Trump supporter people had a point before. He's not going to bring in the Bush era people. He's going to drain the swamp, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but he didn't do that. And now he's filling his cabinet with neocons. And, oh, God. I mean, what's your thoughts on, like, Pompeo? And have you heard of
the whole thing is, like, who's he going to hire so that he can fire on Twitter next week?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember this revolving door of cabinet people ever. Do you?
Normally,
it's like usually they would all stay. Maybe one would have to go, but this is like complete employee turnover every month.
Typically, what happens is, maybe one or two people will leave during the first administration. But usually after the re-election, after they win their second term, there'll be a flush out. Half of the people will leave and they'll get hired. Right. Because you're doing like a change of staff. You won re-election. Now you kind of can change because you don't have to win re-election again. So you could just go all out with your policies. So it's not normal, but I don't know why we're surprised, like from The Apprentice, that a guy whose catchphrase was "you're fired" is like firing everyone left and right. But I think you had a good point too. Who the hell would want to go and get a job with Trump? Because you're just going to get fired, or just whatever you say, Trump's
going to
come out.
You're going to be publicly ridiculed.
Yeah. Trump will
You're
undermine
fired
you.
on Twitter.
Yeah. And it's Rex Tillerson of the ex-CEO, and it was also, I think he was in like another country doing work while he was fired. It's just it's insane how it's working, and I can't believe that Loop Dog is all defending it,
Oh yeah, he loves it.
Yeah.
It's part of the TV show. I mean, shit, Omarosa was on the show and she was in the thing. She got fired both times. I mean, he just eats it up. Just eats it up, dude.
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. It's like, it almost is like they have it scripted. Like Trump's like, okay, come on, Omarosa, I'm going to have you come in the White House a little bit, fire you, then you can go do another reality show, make way more money. Because it makes her way more relevant because she went in the White House. And then after she was fired on the news was like, oh, Omarosa's mad that she got fired. And like, oh, now her being mad she got fired is a whole news story. Oh, great.
Yeah, well, what a waste of my time. In the meantime, people are shooting each other, and nobody cares because we're worried about Omarosa's feelings. I mean, I could care less.
Yes.
I mean, fire them all.
Yeah, and that's the chaos. It's almost, like I was saying, it's almost like planned, kind of this planned distraction, so then they can get these tax cuts through. They can, up the military budget by $100 billion. They could do this stuff, while everyone's, paying attention to Stormy Daniels and Omarosa and all this distraction. But it's entertaining, and, Loop Dog, people like Loop Dog love it, so...
Yeah, stupid fucking people.
God, I really,
like
I hope Loop Dog listens to this episode, and yeah.
He's too busy listening to our podcast. The guy has listened to our podcast 210 times. I can track it. I can track it.
You're like, okay, we're getting this many downloads, but half of them are coming from this guy. God damn it, Loop Dog.
7% is one of the people on the fucking show. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh man, fucking Loop, dude. Yeah, he won't. You're right. He won't listen to this because his voice isn't on this episode, so he won't even listen to it.
Right. There's no point. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, dude, thanks so much, JayRay, man, for coming on the show. And, it's really cool, dude, how you're starting up this No Phony Podcast Network. So I'm sure I'll have you on again in the future. We'll talk about some more bands and more of the featured podcasts. And I'm going to keep plugging all these podcasts. And also, any bands out there, get in contact with me. I'll shoot you over to JayRay over here, and he will hook you up with a podcast to get your music on bumper music or something, because it's all about this networking that we need to do, and not just with networking with podcasts and just with bands, but we need to cross network,
Absolutely. It's nophonynetwork.com.
Okay.
And we're on Twitter at phonyno.
Cool. And that's the website. And then
cool.
And
website 390's on there too. If you want to hear punk, go to the website. We got 390 on the website too. It ain't just podcasts.
Yeah, 390. And
hopefully we'll get more bands, like you say, brother.
Yeah, that's kind of the goal. Yeah, we're trying to get more bands hooked up, and then also JayRay and Loop Dog. Definitely go check out their podcast. It's Politics with Dummies. And then what's your Twitter handle and everything?
With Dummies.
Cool. Yeah. Go over there and just talk.
We don't have a Facebook because fuck Facebook.
You hate Facebook, yes, I know.
I hate Facebook, yeah.
Yeah. So go over on Twitter and search With Dummies and go talk shit to Loop Dog. It'll be fun. So it'll be entertaining.
Fucking right on.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks so much, man, for coming on the podcast, dude.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Definitely. All right, before we go, let's check out one more band. Here's Bones by New Crimes.
Scattered fragments of life like a cover.
What is up, my fellow political junkies, and welcome to Open Mic's Last Call, and thank you for making it all the way in the end of the podcast. That's pretty impressive, and I'm always wondering how many people actually make it this far, but if you're hearing my voice, you made it this far, and congratulations. But before we get into my little rant of the week, I do have to address something. This episode was recorded a few weeks ago with JayRay, and we were talking about the featured podcast on the No Phony Podcast Network was Release the Clowns, and that was the previous one. And right now, currently, the actual featured podcast is Bats and Balls podcast. So definitely go check them out. If you haven't already, go follow us on Twitter at PRP_podcast, or you can go check out the at No Phony. And that's the No Phony Podcast Network. And you could check out all these awesome podcasts if you want to expand your podcast horizons and, check out a bunch of cool stuff. So the Bats and Balls podcast, which I do have to say, that's probably the freaking coolest name of any podcast, but they basically cover all sorts of sports and everything. So I do want to give a huge shout out, and I love their accents. I'm not sure if they're from Australia or UK. I'm pretty sure they're from Australia, but they talk about rugby and all sorts of sports. So big shout out to the Bats and Balls podcast. And once again, I freaking love the name of that podcast. It's awesome. But here we go. And I do want to say, thanks so much to JayRay for coming on the podcast. And I really wanted to say thank you to JayRay for what he's doing. I mean, like we were talking about in the podcast earlier, I thought creating a podcasting network would be a great idea, but I mean, I just don't have time to do it, and that's a little bit above my pay grade personally. So really a lot of respects to JayRay, what he's doing and how he's trying to promote other podcasts, and he's helping all these other independent artists, and he's featured 390 on his podcast. And like we're saying, it's all about cross promotion. It's all about helping each other out. We're all starving artists here. We all create things, and it's really cool when we're able to help each other out as a community of independent artists. So once again, much respect to JayRay and his awesome little sidekick, Loop Dog. So also go check out Politics with Dummies if you're into political stuff, which if you're listening to this, I'm pretty sure you're probably in this political ranting. So speaking of political rants, let's fucking do this. Okay, I decided to take 2 weeks off. I've been doing this podcast for well over a year and a half, and I think I've only taken 1 week off at a time. I was out of town for a little over a week, and then when I got back, I didn't have time to put out a podcast, so I just didn't do anything for 2 weeks. So don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We're here. We're still doing this. And actually, if nothing else, I think that 2 weeks really gave me a refresh and a new perspective on looking at the podcast. But where was I? I was actually out in Philadelphia checking out a Phillies game for my other podcast that I do with my dad, the old man, called Chasing a Dream with the Dugout Duo. And we talk about basically baseball and all the different stadiums, and we go to them and everything. And it's great. I'm able to take a rest from politics, because politics is very divisive. And okay, I took 2 weeks. What's going to happen, right? No, nothing's going to happen. God damn it, we fucking bombed Syria, and we bypassed international law. We went through the UN. We didn't even listen to the UN Charter, and this shit just pisses me off, So here I am. I'm able to rant about it, and hopefully someone's gonna hear this, and we could totally... I'm just so frustrated, because I have never been given so much shit for when I advocate for peace and when I advocate for no war. And, I could go and advocate, gay marriage, advocate for, common sense gun reform, or pretty much any issue. And I don't get that much shit. But once I start talking about peace, once I start talking about, hey, maybe we shouldn't bomb people, maybe we shouldn't go and bomb a chemical facility that was allegedly used, which we don't even know that Assad recently dropped these chemicals on his people. We don't even know it. And the day before the independent weapons inspectors were going to go into the scene to check it out, we go and bomb the fucking facility. Not just the one facility. We sent 100 and I believe it was 110 Tomahawk missiles into several facilities. So I call complete bullshit on this West narrative. And of course, we have the mainstream media really pushing this idea that anyone who is questioning this narrative of, just rushing to war is now basically a Russian bot. And, this is infuriating. This is basically, I feel like we're back in 2003 with the lead up to the Iraq War. And back in 2003, I was calling bullshit on Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing a podcast back then, so I wasn't able to document it and prove, but personally, and one thing that I'm very passionate about is anti-war. And we've been in several wars for over 17 years. We've been in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen. Well, we're not in Yemen. We're supplying the Saudis, who are basically committing genocide in Yemen, a proxy war. And that's pretty much what's going on here in Syria. And so it's kind of like the more countries we invade, the more countries we bomb in the Middle East, the worse it gets. So what is the justification for this bomb? Well, there's basically a YouTube video. And this YouTube video was put out by the White Helmets, who are basically a humanitarian propaganda front for the rebels, which are in Syria, and they're fighting Assad. It's kind of like a rebranding of Al-Qaeda, if you will. So explain this shit to me, okay? We are over fighting ISIS and fighting Al-Qaeda, fighting the Taliban. We're fighting these radical Muslim fundamentalist groups. But in Syria, we are supplying the radical fundamentalists. The Al-Nusra Front is essentially a different faction that's going on here in Syria, and we're arming these people. So how does it make sense that we can go and we're basically fighting the same group in Iraq, yet we're supplying them with weapons in Syria? I mean, all I can say is our foreign policy here in America, in the Middle East, is schizophrenic, if at the best. And here's my main problem, okay? A lot of the people on the right and on the left, their justification for bombing Syria is, well, Assad using chemical weapons on his people. We do not have any proof of that, but that is the narrative. So Assad is breaking international law. So what do we do? The US, the UK, and France, we go in and we bypass international law and bomb him. So apparently, the only people that international law applies to is anyone other than the US, UK, and France. So, once again, the hypocrisy here is so thick, and more bombs, more destruction is not going to fix this problem. It's not going to end the civil war that's been going on in Syria for, at least 5 or 10 years now. It's ridiculous. But that's where we are. This is where we are as a civilization, as a culture. We've been in war for over 17 years. It's accomplished nothing. If anything, this occupation in the Middle East, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, or like I was saying earlier, Libya, Somalia, and there's a dozen. And this isn't even counting Yemen and all of our little mini proxy wars we're funding the Saudis or Israel. And they're going in and bombing with American-made weapons. So it's just really disheartening. And like I said, I'm getting shit from all sides on this, whether it be on Twitter or Facebook or anything, because people are so quick to rush to war. And it's really just disgusting how war obsessed and war hungry a lot of American citizens are. And it's a lot different than 2003, because in 2003, we didn't have this big advent of, Twitter and these YouTube videos and independent media and access to RT or Al Jazeera. They were there, but the access and availability to other forms of media was very limited in 2003. So the state-ran media, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, our propaganda wing here in America, it was really easy to push this false narrative that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, which we ended up learning was a complete lie. So here we are again, jumping the ship, bombing another country when we have zero evidence that Assad actually used chemical weapons against his own people. Now, here's the thing. I do not think Assad is a great guy. I do not think Russia is some outstanding, amazing country. However, Assad has been democratically elected in his country, and he has personally asked Russia to be there. So if we want to sit back and talk about international law, we have to stop and say, he is democratically elected. And we go into these countries, we take them down. If you look at Iran, we go in, we try to install the Shah, that backfires, and we get the Ayatollahs, and the country goes even further fundamentalist. We go in, we put in Saddam Hussein, and then when he's not really our puppet of choice anymore, we remove Saddam, put in Maliki, the country falls apart, and Iraq used to be the largest Christian population in the Middle East. Now Christians cannot live in Iraq anymore because they're being persecuted and they will be killed. So what the fuck does American foreign strategy do? It does nothing. All we do is we go into a country, we install dictators. Once the dictators don't work for us anymore, we take them out and the country goes to shit. So I'm calling complete bullshit on this, and it's basically what's going on in Syria is a proxy war. It's a proxy war between the US, Israel, Saudis versus the Iran and Russia, essentially. And now we have China kind of chiming in because Russia went after this bombing campaign. They drafted a UN resolution trying to basically condemn the US, and pretty much everyone on the Security Council, they abstained from voting. They're like, we're not going to vote because America gives us money, America supplies us, so we're going to abstain from voting. But guess who supported Russia in that and who voted for the resolution against the US and UK and France? China. So the battle lines are being drawn, and it's terrifying what's going on. It's completely terrifying. And I'm a very anti-war person, and I'm going to keep preaching peace, and I'm going to keep preaching that we need to have foreign intervention. Yes. And we need to support humanitarian aid, yes, but going and trying to support humanitarian aid through bombs and through killing more people, it is illogical at best, and it hasn't worked. The past 17 years have proven that going into a country and trying to bomb them to make peace only feeds the fundamentalists' agenda, and it helps their campaign because we're going in and we're killing civilians. Granted, this recent attack, thank God, no civilians were killed, but we have conflicting reports from Syria, Russia, and the US. Syria saying, over half of the rockets were shot down. The US is saying, no, we hit all the targets, but that's not the main issue. The main issue is that the US believes it's above international law, but we use international law to justify us to go in to attack people. So I'm fucking pissed, and I'm sorry. Normally I'm a lot more articulate at what I want to say, but this just gets my emotions running, and I'm just tired. I'm fucking tired of the war in the Middle East, and I'm tired of us, the US, an imperialist nation, going and trying to just bomb every country and thinking, oh, okay, we can just go in there, we'll take out their dictator, we'll put in our own dictator. If that doesn't work, well, we'll just go bomb the shit out of them. And this hasn't worked. Like I said, with the Shah in Iran, which brought the Ayatollahs, same thing with taking out Saddam Hussein, that brought about ISIS. It's not working, and it's not the way to go. So thank you for listening to my rant. I had to get that shit off my chest, and I'm just so pissed at this happened because I kind of unplugged from politics for about a week, 5 days. And then as I was coming back to reality, coming back here to Southern California, I saw this propaganda or this news of, Assad used chemical weapons. And it just rings so hollow because pretty much this is the only justification that the war machine, the military industrial complex has to be able to go and take out these countries. And, before I wrap it up, Raytheon and Boeing, they do great. They do great. When we drop bombs, their stock prices go up. And that's, that's capitalism, and that's our imperialistic empire here. So, God, I hope this doesn't escalate anymore, and we really need to push for peace. And if you have a voice, if you can talk to anyone, please do it and go do more research. Don't take my advice for it, but you can't just listen to the mainstream media and take everything that they say. You have to take it with a grain of salt, because if we go back and look at history, we see that the mainstream media, the government, Colin Powell was holding the white phosphorus or whatever and saying, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. And that was a complete bullshit. And we had the media beating the drums of war mindlessly. And now, if you're against the war, if you're not even against the war, if you just question the narrative, you are a Russian bot or you are a Russian troll. So this is really scary times we're living in, and I'm terrified, and I don't want to be, man. I fucking don't want to be, because we can have peace, and we can have a civil society and a world where we can work things out in a diplomatic manner in the UN. This is what the UN is for. It's about fucking time the US stops negating the UN, and we need to abide by international law. So thanks so much for stopping by and checking out Punk Rock and Politics. And I have so many awesome new interviews coming up, so much great news. We have a show coming up here on May 4th. We're going to be talking a lot more. So if you are in the Southern California area, specifically Anaheim, California, we'll be doing the show on May 4th at the Doll Hut. We're going to have a bunch of bands, including, Whining Pussies, Theo Hirsch, and of course, 390, right? The Punk Rock and Politics resident band, per se. So we're going to actually have Ronnie and most likely Steve, Dr. Steve from the Whining Pussies, come on, and we're going to talk about all the cool bands playing, and, let's stop with all the negativity. We need to have some positivity, and we need to go out, and we're going to do the political mosh pit live. So I'm super excited for that show. But hey, I've gone way over, and this episode's probably going to be way too long, so I got to wrap it up. So once again, thanks so much, and thank you for sticking with us and allowing me to have that 2-week vacation, because that was awesome, and I'm refreshed, and I'm more into this than ever. And I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and you guys rock, because this is a blast, man. And interviewing bands, interviewing people like JayRay, being able to make fun of his little sidekick Loop Dog, and I've made so many friends, and I've met so many awesome listeners, and I've had great conversations on Twitter with so many great people that I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the podcast, whatever you do, just thank you. And if you are in the Southern California area, please stop down by the show on May 4th, and I'll have more information on that coming up. So once again, Thanks so much, and, why don't we just give peace a chance? I'll see you next time. Thanks for checking out Punk Rock and Politics. If you enjoyed the show and the information brought to you, please subscribe and share the podcast. It helps us here at Punk Rock and Politics, but more importantly, it helps the featured bands gain exposure. Also, if you know any bands or musicians who would like to join the political mosh pit and have their music featured on the Punk Rock and Politics podcast, please email us at punkrockandpolitics@gmail.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. And rock on, political junkies.
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
Doing a better job of talking to each other. The left hand now knows what the right hand is doing.
Look at those hands. Are they small hands? And he referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it.